Welcome, tervetuloa.
Wow, that was quite an introduction. There are many things I didn't know about myself. This must be one of the earliest Finnish lessons I've ever seen in my life. It's 8:30 in the morning and the room is full. Wonderful to be here. Can we get the slide, or should I? Okay. Wonderful. How are you doing? Yeah, are you going to go to work after this? No, not to the beach. You know, this is my one of the few holiday weeks of the year, so I'm here on holidays. So this is how Finns spend their holidays. I have my family here. We are staying on Miami Beach, and I wanted to take them with me, but it was jet lag is too difficult for us at this hour, so they stayed there. As you heard, I'm a board member of the ASCD. How many of you know what the ASCD is? It's one of the largest associations for improving education in the world, based here in the United States, and we have a board retreat in Miami starting on Friday. Tonight I fly to Harvard, to Boston, just to give a talk there tomorrow morning, and then come back to my family if the weather conditions allow, because there's a first. You don't need to worry about the snow here. I know that. Anyway, I'm going to speak to you a little bit about the Finnish school system. I'm mostly focusing on K to 12, but if you feel like asking something else, please do so. And the reason for focusing on the K to 12 is that that's what we are most often talking about. I think there are very few people in Finland who would dare to come to the United States and start to talk about how higher education should be organized, because you are the country and the nation of higher education, if any. So that's why I think I should be asking questions from you about how to make higher education work and how to build world-class universities. So that's why I think I'm focusing on K to 12. Let me start by making a couple of very important remarks. First is that I didn't come here this morning to try to convince you that Finland has the best education system in the world. I think this is it's a mistake that many people make. Particularly media is saying that Finland has the best education system in the world, because we don't. No, what is education system? We are looking at higher education, adults, everything, yeah? And now what we are mostly looking at when we are speaking about international education is what junior high school students can do, yeah? So that's why I'm not here to tell you that the Finland is the best and then everybody else comes afterwards. I'm not a fan of this type of ranking of countries. But I'm probably here partly to tell you that if anything in education, Finland is probably holding the world record in one sense that is very important for us Finns. And it is that we have the public school system in Finland that is enjoying probably the highest confidence and trust by taxpayers of any country in the world. You know, our treasury annually asks taxpayers, parents and citizens how much they rely and trust in public institutions. And for many years, the #1 seat has been taken by our school system. It's more than 80% of the respondents say that they trust our school system. Yeah? I don't know how much it would be here or in some other countries. Somewhere else people say that it would be probably 20% rely on the school system and 80% think that it's not really doing what it should be doing. The other thing is that about a year ago somebody did a research in Finland, a serious academic research, asking that when Finland is becoming 100-year-old nation in a few years' time in 2017, that what have been the most significant accomplishments of our young soon 100 years old country. And you know, we have things like Wind War, Angry Birds and Nokia, Sibelius and Paavo Nurmi and all these things that you don't probably know. But 75% of people, adults who answered this survey and this research, were part of the research, say that it's our school system, our K to 9 or K to 12 school system. Isn't it wonderful? The people think in Finland that the best thing that we have been able to build among all these achievements that people know in the world is our public school system. Yeah? And I think that that's much more important for us than being number 1 or 3 or 5 or whatever in the international rankings. If people in Finland think that we have something that is a kind of a treasure, that's what we should be taking care of. Okay? The second notion is that I'm not speaking to you this morning to say that if you only do what Finns have done in education reform or policy, everything will be fine here in Florida or in the United States. It doesn't work like this. I think at best Finland can be a source for inspiration and learning and a place where you can ask questions from yourself. And we have a lot of visitors now coming from the United States, and this is what I tell everybody, that don't try to copy what we have been doing. If you see something that you don't quite understand or is surprising, ask yourself, compare it to the things that you are doing, and try to understand why things are done in a different way. And that's, I think, many people are saying that Finland is really a source for inspiration and thinking about your own things rather than imitate or copy what we have been doing. Thirdly and lastly, I think there's nothing really surprising in Finnish education anymore. Some people are speaking about a miracle of education. I don't think so. I think it's in a Finnish way, a very common sense of thinking about what is important in education and children's lives, and then just doing it. Yeah, and that's why I'm going to speak about this a little bit. I try to take away of this kind of an illusion that many people have that Finland is a kind of a glorious paradise place for education. It's not. It's a very common sense things, like most things in Finland. If you look at the other things in education, it's a very common sense, simple, straightforward way of thinking about things and putting right things first, and that's what we have been trying to do. Okay? Are you all with me still? Yes, you are. All right. Okay, let me see if this works, because I have some pictures for you. Okay. I want to start with this one, because here, when I'm speaking here in the United States, I always remember my grandfather, who almost exactly 99 years ago, like many Finns, came to the United States in the spring of 1914. This photograph is him when he's 18 years old, just arrived in New York City, and the reason for him coming here was education. Another reason was that the Russian Tsar that was ruling Finland that time was quite eager to take young Finnish men because they were strong and courageous, and send them to wars all around the world. Yeah, so many Finns left that time because they didn't want to die for Russia. Yeah, if you know what I mean. So this is for him, and then when Finland became independent in 1917, he a few years later came back to see his father, who was old and actually died very soon after this. And then it happened like it sometimes happens in life, that he met a Finnish woman, and all Finnish women are beautiful and caring and wonderful people. Yeah. So what else can a man do but fall in love, and the rest is history. You know, if things had been in a little bit different with him, I could be probably one of you there sitting and listening to somebody else talking about Finnish. Anyway, this is for my grandfather. I have some pictures I want to show you. You know, when I ask people that what do you think about Finland in this meeting here, because many of you probably know about Finland, is there anybody who hasn't been in Finland yet? Wow. Get out. Okay, but you still have time to come, but don't come this time, because Finland looks like exactly like this. You know, when I'm speaking about education, I often realize that there are two types of people in the world. There are Finns, and then there are wannabe Finns, particularly with education things. But this picture is a kind of an illustration of what most people in the world, wherever I go, even Sweden, that is a next-door neighbor in the West, when I say Finland and I ask them to tell me what is the image that they have in their minds, most people have something like this. You probably as well. Yeah? If you close your eyes and try to capture kind of an idea what you have about Finland, it's something like this. That it's ice and snow and cold and dark. Yeah? And then there are people who say that this is Finland always. Yeah? 12 months a year, 24 hours a day, this is Finland. And then there are some people who come to me and say that, oh yeah, now I understand why your kids are so good in school and they do so well in the studies, because it's always like this, yes? You know, there's nothing else to do. You're going to go out and play football or whatever you do. You stay indoors, you go to school, come back and do your homework, yeah, all the time. That's, of course, not true. Those who haven't been in Finland should know this very well. But three things, and I'm running these fairly fast because I want to go to the education, but there are three things that are absolutely necessary to be reminded of people, particularly if your awareness of Finland is not, and Finnish education are not up to date. If they're not up to date, you can always read my book. Yeah? And this is what I learned. Somebody gave me this American lesson that when you speak here, always, you know, remind people that you have done something. I can never do this in Finland, you know. This is not allowed. They think that you are something, okay? But read the book. Okay, the first one, the first thing is that, and please know this, that Finland has not always been what I call a high performer in education. And high performer here means many other things than just how much students can learn math and science and reading that are normally measured in these international studies, okay? 40 years ago, when we started the reform that we have been doing really 40 years systematically since the early 1970s, the situation was a little bit like this, that Finland was catching up with everybody else in educational performance, whether it's a student achievement or equity or equality, efficiency, productivity, you name it, we were all behind all of these areas, everybody else, particularly the United States. And this is my estimate of the progress of educational performance over time, over the 4 decades from 1970s to date. And in my book, I can show you, I have all the evidence about Finland that I could find, that somehow the progress of educational performance in Finland has been faster and more steady than in the rest of the world. I don't know how you would paint the pathway of the United States over there or your state. You know, some people say that there has not been really too much progress in the United States at all, or it's been very modest, given to all the billions of dollars that have come to the education reforms. Then there are those who say that no, it's been all downhill in the United States. Since the days when I went to school here in America, it was great, and now it's not. Yeah, and then there are those who say that there has been ups and downs in American education. I leave it to you to imagine and decide how it could be. But what is important is that the progress in Finland has been. Finland is one of the very few countries in the world actually that can demonstrate that there has been a steady progress of educational performance in the longer period of time, okay? The second one is that Finland has never wanted to be number one, and this is equally important. Because there are many people who think that maybe Finland is educationally there where it is now because of having a very aggressive and systematic plan and strategy to beat everybody else and be on the top. We have never thought like this, yeah? This is what I see when I travel around the world and look around what ministers and presidents and political powers are thinking of their own education systems. Many countries set their educational goals nowadays, including your country, that we want to be the best. I haven't seen American policy of anything where you would set your target to be number 5 or number 10. You know, in this way, this is a kind of a tricky thing for the United States, because you cannot say that we want to be number 10 in education, which would be excellent, actually. Let me tell you one thing straight away. You can never beat the Asian countries anymore in math and science and reading. Just forget it. You cannot do this. Yeah? We cannot do it either. They are gone. Yeah? So that's why we need to think about something else to do. So dream about being number 1 in education in the world is long time gone. We should set our goals in a different way, and that's exactly what we've been doing. You know, there's a little anecdote here. When I was working in the ministry in the 1990s, this was just about 5 years before the first international PISA study came along. How many of you know what the OECD PISA study is? Okay, it's a very important. It's probably one of the most referenced international student assessment study in the world, done by the OECD every 3 years. And year 2000 was the first year when it was done. And all the wealthy nations are part of this study, United States, Canada, Finland, and all the others, okay? So I went to Sweden with our minister about 5 years before this. And we were sitting in the Swedish Minister of Education's cabinet there and listening to this very detailed strategy and plan how to make Sweden as the best school system in the world by the first PISA study will be launched, okay? And we had a minister that time. She was from the eastern part of Finland, and those people who come from the eastern part of Finland, they have a very nice sense of humor. You know, they catch the situation very quickly, and then they behave accordingly. So when her turn came to reply, she said, thank you very much, Mr. Minister. This is all very interesting, and I hope that you will really become the best school system in the world by year 2000. But I just want to tell you one thing, that in Finland, you know, our goals are much more modest than yours here in Sweden in education, because you see, for us in Finland, it's enough to be ahead of Sweden. And this is exactly what happened, okay? So now if you think that how Finland is has been setting the education and national education strategies and goals, it's a very different, because we still have a goal that we simply want to have a school system that is good for everybody, that is providing an opportunity to be successful for all children. And this is a great example of the adoption of great American ideals in education. The equal education opportunity is a truly American idea, going all the way back to Thomas Jefferson, 200 years and more. Yeah? So we are doing exactly the same, but we are taking this seriously and driving our education reforms and policies from this ideal that we want to have a school system where everybody will learn. And I'll show you a little bit how we have been doing this, okay? And then the third one is that Finland is doing fairly well overall. If you take a look at the examples like this, where I'm benchmarking Finland to just some things that you can easily find if you go to the, no, this is too early. If you go to the internet and Google, just put international rankings, indexes, and you will find all these things. I have selected things that are done by serious research institutions or organizations. These are not individual things. These are things like World Economic Forum, OECD, UN, and many other things. And just take a look pick up any of those important things for our societies and lives, and Finland seems to be doing fairly well compared to the United States and the rest of the world, actually. And that's why I often say that maybe it's just so that Finns are able to make things work, whether it's a health, whether it's a business, whether it's innovation, technology, whatever it is, that we know how to make things work. And of course it's easier for us because we are small, 5.5 million people. We are fairly homogeneous and fairly equal, as you see over there. That it's easier to make things run in a nation like this. And actually there's an interesting supplement in the new this week's Economist, if you read Economist, of the Northern Lights, of all Nordic countries, how they perform very similarly in all areas except education. So Finland is the only Nordic Scandinavian country that is having education performance better than others. So if you take a look at the technological advancement, how many of you know Angry Birds? Raise your hand if you play Angry Birds, or if you know. Did you know that Angry Birds is from Finland? Did you know that? Now you know. Okay, so now when you go home from here, ladies and gentlemen, you can tell your loved ones at home that Finland has Angry Birds. Yeah? And take a look at the UN Happiness Index, for example. It shows you that the Finnish people are among the happiest people in the world, which is very difficult for me sometimes to accept, like in the month of February or January. But now when you go home from here, ladies and gents, you can say that Finland has Angry Birds and happy people. Yeah? Because there are many other countries in the world where they have happy birds but angry people, and mostly because of the educational things. A couple of years ago, you probably remember that the Newsweek had this interesting feature cover story asking what is the best country in the world when different things are considered. And when you read the story, the best country in the world is... That's right, yeah. But you know what was the interesting thing? When this issue was published in August 2010, there were 2 phone calls to the Newsweek headquarters asking for recounts, saying that you have made a mistake. Finland is not the best country in the world because it's Switzerland. And do you know where these phone calls came from, these 2 calls? Asking for recounts, correction. No, from Helsinki. Helsinki, Finland, yeah. They came from 2 of our newspapers who realized that Newsweek had given 102 points out of 100 to Finland for its education. And the Newsweek replied, they published a kind of official reply to this saying that we think that Finnish school system is worth of 102 points, so Finland remains the best country in the world. So there are many things that the media is also doing, and this is one of the nice ones. This is one from your newspapers saying that if you want to live the American dream, move to Finland. Ladies and gents, this is not my idea. This is not the idea of the Finnish honorary consular or our ambassador. This is your media that is putting these things forward. And let me tell you one thing, that in Finland, when we read these things, we often feel very embarrassed. We felt very embarrassed when the first PISA, these international study results came, and Finland was on the top. We said that no, wait a minute, it cannot be so, because our school system is not the best in the world. We have been catching up with everybody, and that's not the story. Okay. So we are not very happy to see these things. Of course, it's nice to read these things in the world media, but this is not really important for us. You know, important for us is what do we have in our own country, and that's what we care for. Okay, so now people may ask that, okay, is this educational performance in Finland because we have had same or similar education policy than everybody else, for example, here in the United States, but we have just been better in implementation. And remember that people often think that because it's always cold and dark and snow outside, that it's easier to change the country when everything is frozen all the time. Yeah. Or is this maybe because we have had different policies and different way of implementing the education policies, okay? And if you want to go deeper in the education reforms and policies in Finland, take this as your approach angle. Try to see how the policies and reforms have been different. Sometimes when I speak about these things here in the United States, people say that, oh no, they are not only different, what you do in education and reforming your school system, they are almost the opposite. Yeah? When you are going this way, the Finns are going the other way. And I'll show you some examples what I mean about this. And this is a very important thing to realize, that the Finns are doing very differently than almost everybody else. Okay? So that's why I call it the Finnish way, or the fourth way, like some people call it. Okay? Are you still awake? Yeah. All right, good. So now I'm going to show you something that looks like black and white, but this is not really a black and white. I just try to illustrate the difference here. And the little thing I have in my book, and I've been working on this now for the last 10 years, I call it the Global Educational Reform Movement. Okay? If you take the first letters of this four-word term, you get something that you understand much better than many other people. It's germ, yeah? And germ is, germ is what it is, yeah? If you get the flu or you get a fever, you probably have a germ. And I think I like this analogy between the infection between people and infection between the education school systems, because it's exactly the same. It's the same type of mechanism how school systems get infected by bad ideas from other places. We normally don't know where. If you have a flu, you don't know where you got the flu from, right? And you really don't care, because the thing you care is that you want to get well. And in the school reform, it's exactly the same thing. That when things start to get bad, in the end of the day, you don't anymore know where this idea came from, who brought it along, where did it come from, and it's the same thing. And now we are in a business of trying to save our schools, yeah, our school systems. Okay, I'll show you some of these symptoms that you can find in global educational reform movement, and this is not a reference to the American school reform or school policy, but you can think how these things reflect what you are doing or what you are experiencing here. This is a global view. These things are happening all over the world, in Asia, in Australia, New Zealand, Latin America, Europe, anywhere you go. Even the Arab states are experiencing these same things. One of the first ones is the increasing belief that the competition is the best way to enhance the quality and efficiency of our education systems, to run school systems and school districts and schools like we run businesses, okay? And the competition, of course, in the business, as you know better than anybody else, is the driving idea. If you have one mobile phone network provider, what happens is that your price is high and quality is low because they don't care. If you have 5, prices go down and quality goes up because people choose, okay? And some people believe that we can use the same idea in education, yeah? Just provide people with options, choice, and the price will go down and the quality will go up. It doesn't work like this. There's not evidence that this would be a kind of a general idea that would lead to improved education anywhere in the world, okay? No, I'm not talking about your school district or your school. This is a general notion based on research as well, that there's not really evidence that competition would be working in education as many people believe, okay? The second one is what I call a test-based accountability. And here in the United States, you have experienced this increasing focus on strong accountability for schools and teachers. In other words, holding individual people in schools or schools as communities accountable for the students' learning. And test-based here means that the tool that we are using for this accountability process is the standardized test. Okay? This is how we get the information whether things get better or worse, and we report up to the authorities or those who are paying for our bills, saying that whether things are going well or not. Okay? And this is a movement happening everywhere around the world. People are going towards this more standardized testing and stronger accountability because they think that this is a good way to improve quality and reduce the cost. Okay? Again, evidence is very mixed, okay, about this thing. If you look at the research, there's not really a proof that this would be, in general, a good idea to go forward, okay? The third one is the standardization, and these are all related issues. And standardization here refers to the fact that there seems to be a belief that if we just standardize, if we set the standards high enough and common to everybody in student learning, teaching, curriculum, how the school should be run, all sorts of things, and then we measure and hold people accountable for achieving these standards, things will get better, okay? Again, the standardization movement doesn't have really a good track record anywhere in the world. Again, it may work somewhere, but it doesn't seem to be working as the best way to improve quality of education in a way that I will show you Finland has been doing. And then the fourth one, again, a very common thing around the world is the increasing privatization of education. Handing over public schools to be run by those who are distant or disconnected from the public authorities or local authorities, and people can do it either on the private basis or charter schools or free schools or however you want to call it, everywhere in the world. This is a movement that is going forward. Again, the evidence for the privatization movement is very mixed, so we cannot really rely too much on evidence. The evidence here is not the most important thing for me, but what I'm going to show you in a minute is how Finland has been responding to these 4 items here. In my book I have some other things related to the germ idea, but let's ask a quick question first. Let's take a look at some of the countries where I believe the germ has been a kind of a cause for infection. And we have to look at the education policies and reforms in the 1990s and about 10 years ago in early 2000, all right? So if there's one country in the world that can show improved performance in student learning anywhere in the world, who has been following these things, I'm quite happy, okay? You should be too. Okay, let me show you this one now. You cannot see so I'm going to read you the names of the countries here. So I have selected some examples here of the countries that I think all of these have been somehow infected by the ideas like this in the 1990s and after that. The first one is United States, then England, Canada, Australia, Japan, New Zealand, and the Netherlands. Okay? There may be some others, but these are among the OECD, the wealthy, rich nations, the countries where some of these ideas, or all of them, have been somehow present. So what do you see there? if we look at the, let me show you, we are looking at the mathematics learning of the 15-year-olds in this OECD PISA study in 2000, 2003, 2006, and 2009. So it's a 3-year cycle measurement about the same things of the 15-year-olds math. It could be science as well. It doesn't change the picture. Well, you see probably what I see, that all of these countries have declining performance. All of them. There's not a single country that would show improving results. Okay? Although some of them have been starting in a fairly, this is the average, OECD average, and some of the countries have been below the OECD average. But they still haven't been able to improve the performance. So this is where Finland is. All right? And you will see that the track record of Finland has been quite different. Yeah? The same thing in science, the same thing in reading, that Finland is one of those countries that have been able to improve the performance over time. There's a little bit dip in the last 2009 study, and we can talk about this if you wish, but the regression trend is improving. Okay? So there's not a single example that would convince me that the competition, strong accountability, testing, and other things would have been really the best means for improving quality of education. I'm not saying that they are bad ideas or wrong ideas, but drive the reform based on these has not been really showing off. Okay, so let's see how Finland has responded through the education policies during the course of the last 40 years, really, 30, 40 years, to these 4 ideas. Rather than competition, we have been deliberately and systematically focusing on collaboration and cooperation, networking, sharing between educational institutions, school principals, teachers, pupils, communities, so that cooperation and collaboration is what is awarded and rewarded, not winning the competition. Okay? So if you read the Finnish education policies, we have several examples there of funded programs, for example, where the funding is based on your intention to cooperate and share your good practices with those who need it more than you do. Okay? So it's a little bit against the idea of race to the top that you have here, where you are competing against the other districts before the other states, where you don't share what you have been able to do, because then you will not win. So this kind of a sense of cooperation is a very important part of the Finnish way. The second one is that rather than insisting stronger accountability for teachers and principals, we have been building the sense of responsibility and trust in our school systems. Many, particularly American visitors, when they leave Finland, I meet almost everybody, all of them, and I always ask the same question, is that what are you taking with you from Finland after spending a week here and seeing schools and talking to teachers and principals and superintendents? What is the thing that you share with your family when you go home? Most of them will say that, now I know how trust looks like when it's implemented as part of the culture of schooling in Finland, where the teachers trust their students, where the principals trust their teachers, and politicians and authorities trust schools. Okay? And it's a very different way. Somebody said to me, actually I defined in my book accountability, because we don't have word accountability in Finnish. Yeah? That's not a word we use in education. So my definition for accountability in education is that accountability is something that is left when responsibility is subtracted. And this is coming from one of your colleagues who said to me about 6 months ago when they were visiting schools, she said that, now I understand that if we enhance and insist stronger accountability of schools and teachers and principals, that it's taking the responsibility of learning away from pupils. And I didn't think about this really that way before this colleague told me this. And I asked her to elaborate a little bit more about what she means. And she said, what I saw in Finnish classrooms was a systematic way of teachers saying to very little pupils in elementary school that it's your responsibility to learn. You are doing this learning for yourself, not for me, or for the principal, or anybody else. That's your job. And teaching this responsibility, she said, seems to be the key in the Finnish school life. And then she said that if these teachers were insisted a stronger accountability, this responsibility would disappear. Yeah? Because teacher would be responsible for the students' learning, not the students themselves. Very important and smart way of looking at this thing. The third one, rather than standardization, I think Finland is focusing much more on personalization or creativity, if you wish. And I'm often saying that Finnish school system is probably one of the most individualized, personalized in the world, because our law requires, if you read the Finnish law on education, it says that education has to be organized according to the needs of each and every individual. We cannot standardize. We cannot have a kind of a common procedures in a school because we have to look at each and every child as an individual. And that's why we have a large part of our students and pupils in our school system who have an individual or personalized learning plan that doesn't follow the standards or curriculum that everybody else is doing. Yeah? Because their abilities and skills and interest and capacities are different. And that's why I think this personalization or customization, where customization here refers to that each and every school in Finland is setting their own standards. We don't have a common core standards coming from the government. It's a job of each and every school and all of the teachers and students and the communities to engage in the standard setting or curriculum design. Of course, we have a framework. We have a national framework that is guiding this standard setting, but the responsibility and the task for writing the standards and deciding what they want to do in the school is with the teachers. And then the local authorities must approve, of course, the school curricula that the teachers, they cannot do whatever they want. It has to be approved by the local education authorities. But it's a very different process than if you send the standards from the central office and say that this is what you have to do, and somebody will come and test it and measure, because we don't have any standardized testing in Finland at all before the end of the high school, when Finnish students are 18 or 19 years old. There's a nice discussion going on in Twitter, people asking that what is the appropriate age to be standardized test? Because I don't know if it's here in this country where somebody has an idea to implement standardized testing already in preschool, like a 5-year-olds or something like this. Yeah. So my reply is, some people have been asking me that. So what is it? How is it in Finland? What is the kind of a legal age to sit the standardized test? And I said that in Finland the legal age to sit the standardized test is exactly the same when you can start to drink, smoke, and drive a car. Because then you're old enough to understand and bear the consequences. If you're 5 or 7 or 11, you have no clue what you're doing. Yeah? And we should not put our children into this type of situation where they have to decide where their performance is influencing how their teachers are paid or whether they have their jobs or not. It's not the Finnish way. And the third one, the last one is the equity idea. I will speak about this equity a little bit more. I know that people like Linda Darling-Hammond, for example, that some of you may know, one of the best-known American educator today, has written a book called The Flat World of Education, where the subtitle is saying that the future of America will depend on how you deal and how you're going to cope with the equity and equality problem or issue challenge in this country. And I think this is what Finland has been doing all along since the 1970s, when Finland was very unequal, okay, and divided nation 40 years ago. And the equity has been a kind of a driving idea. Equity here refers simply to it's not the private equity in Wall Street, like some people think. If you want my definition for equity, it's very simple. Equity in education means that what is the strength of relationship between children's family background and their performance in school, right? Again, one of the greatest American studies of any time was published in 1966. It's known as Coleman Report. And Coleman, everybody, you should know Coleman. And Coleman said that schools really don't matter, because what children learn and what they will become is independent from what teachers and schools are trying to do. Those who come from disadvantaged backgrounds, they will remain, they will never go to college or university or never but statistically don't. And those who come from educated, wealthy families will get open access, okay? And now the equity is challenging this Coleman idea, saying that if you have an equitable system of education, it will break down this correlation, yeah? Meaning that anybody can be successful, anybody can perform, okay? If you have weaker equity, it means that this Coleman's idea will apply there, all right? So let's take a look at this. You know, you could have different labels for this this left-hand side movement and the Finnish way. The Finnish way is often called as the pathway of professionalism of teachers and leaders. This I see it's more like a movement based on market business type of corporate ideas and assumptions, right? I'm going to go ahead. So let's look at some of the education policies and then we go to the conversation here. Okay. I have some questions for you now. One of them, the first one of them is simply looking at the equality. I have 3 policies for you. The first one is overall equality in the nation. This is not about educational issues at all. This is about income inequality or equality in nations. And what I've done here is a very simple one. I take the income inequality here in the horizontal axis, okay? So if the inequality is large, if the wealth distribution is wide, okay, the country is on that side. If the wealth distribution in the country is fairly narrow, okay, in other words, the country is equal, the country will come here. And the learning outcomes based on the international studies are here in a vertical axis. So the average is somewhere here, okay? So this is the average of income inequality and educational performance. Where do you think United States is? Way there, yeah? Up or down? It's a little bit below the international average in educational performance, but you are one of the most unequal nations in the world. There's only one country I know having more inequality than the United States in terms of wealth distribution, that is Singapore. Where do you think Finland is? Finland is over there. Okay? So we have a very small income gap compared to the United States and rest of the world, and fairly high educational performance. Let me show you now how the other about 20 wealthy nations find their place in this map, where we look at the income inequality and educational performance. Because the interesting question is that is there any type of correlation here? That if you have more inequality, do these countries seem to be performing better or worse in education? And there's a weak negative correlation between the inequality and educational performance. Of course, we cannot draw any causal laws based on this, but it's an interesting thing, isn't it? Yeah? Basically, it says that if you're a smart politician and you want to improve the quality of your education system, you also think about these things and try to do things that will make your country a little bit more equal in terms of income, because you know that this will help the education reform probably to achieve its goals. Okay, the second one, now we look at the equity again, and let me show you something that is a little bit disturbing. This goes back to my earlier notion here. This is the OECD flag, and the OECD is the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, where 34 countries in the world belong. If you're wealthy and you're doing well, you belong to this rich countries club, all right? And the OECD is doing this PISA study, okay? So the PISA is not really for anybody else but the OECD countries, but there are many other countries taking part in it. And this is how things are often reported. Everybody knows that the United States is fairly close of the OECD average, which is not really a bad place to be, but of course for Americans you would like to be much higher than others. And here you will see not all the OECD countries, but many of them. And this is something that I particularly don't like as a way of reporting the educational performance, because we are only looking at the excellence. We are looking at the science, math, and reading results. And I don't like this because the OECD is doing much more than this, okay? And let me show you now how we can look at the same picture if we take the equity axis here. Now we get more two-dimensional picture here. So we can look at the country's performance in terms of math, reading, and science, okay? And we can also look at the country's performance in terms of how equitable the systems are, Are you with me? Okay, so we can see much more into this little picture than just these things that you often see, that United States is number 17 and 25 and so on, which is not really, it's a very narrow and limited picture over there. My second question to you is that where is the United States in this picture? What do you think? Same? No, it's not. Okay. You can place your map, your map in your mind somewhere there, and this is where United States is. This is surprising, isn't it? That you are on the better side of the equity scale, because if you were over here, and also equity. Okay, so it's not really that bad. And I'm always saying that the American school system is not bad. You have issues that you need to work on, but you could not, based on this evidence, you cannot say that things are really horrible. Okay? So here are some of the other OECD countries. They are not all, and not all of them are OECD countries yet, but most of them are. And what you see here now, when we look at where the countries are in terms of equity and excellence. It's interesting, isn't it? So in all these countries, they found their place in, it's like a stairway to heaven. Yeah? Stairway to heaven. It's over there where the three high-performing countries are Korea, Canada, South Korea, Canada, and Japan. Okay? And all these countries, they're trying to go there. So there's no country with the high equity and low quality, or high quality and low equity. And somehow, equity and quality seem to be connected. That if you get the other one, you get the other one too. Yeah? Now, where is Finland? Do you know how Finnish flag looks like? It's a white and blue. So this is where Finland was in 1972. 40 years ago. You know, we had a system that was very unequal, and the quality was below the world average. Okay? So now, if you look at this little flag of Finland, I show what has been the path of Finland during the last 40 years. So I'm going to run 40 years in about 2 seconds. Okay? So take a careful look, because there are many ways. There are many ways to move. Yeah? And this is how Finland has been moving in 40 years. Yeah, you can give a little hand for Finland if you want. You know, what is interesting here is that there are, as I said, that there are many ways to get there. Yeah? Okay? One way would have been to go up and then glide over there, or one is to go straight. But what Finland has been doing during the course of the last 40 years is to invest heavily in equity upfront, meaning that we have been particularly looking at the fair way of funding of schools, special education, okay, providing equal opportunity for everybody, managing the choice. Yeah, we have not allowed the open market way of providing education in Finland. We have private schools, but they are very carefully managed as a system within the system of public schools. We have a very strong focus on student well-being and health. Every school must give an access to medical doctor, nurse, dentist, counselor, psychological help, warm school meal every day, every child, everywhere in Finland, for the last 40 years. So it's a very systematic way of making sure that children also feel well when they come to school every day. And that's why the quality didn't seem to be improving. You know, the investments were heavy in equity, but then at some point, probably somewhere in the 1990s, the things started to catch up. And this is my estimate how things have been moving. So if you take anything from the international evidence, how to get to the club of high-performing countries, you know, there's 4 countries there now. There's a space for one more. So whoever that will be should carefully think about this picture from the OECD, which says that the good strategy to improve the overall performance of your education system is to invest in equity just like you invest in excellence and quality. Yeah? Unfortunately, many countries are only looking at the excellence and giving the equity a second or third attention, which is not a very smart way of doing these things. And then the last thing, ladies and gentlemen, this is more about teachers and teacher professionalism. This young woman is my niece, my sister's daughter. Isn't she nice? Yeah. I see that there are some young men looking at. I can tell you that she's engaged already. So take it. But the story of her is interesting because about 7 years ago she called me. About this time, a little bit later in the spring, she called me and said that, "Uncle, I have decided to become a primary school teacher. What should I do?" And she called me because I've been working in the university faculty where we train teachers in Finland. And you know, all the teachers in Finland must have a research-based master's degree. And that's the only way to teaching in Finland. We don't have Teach for Finland as you have here or any other pathway. So the only way, if you want to be a teacher in Finland, you have to enroll in one of the 8 universities, study your master's degree that normally takes about 5 to 6 years. You have to do a master's thesis just like mathematicians or medical doctors or anybody else do. It's a very rigorous and demanding program. So she called me and said, "So what do I need to do?" And said that Vera is her name. That you're a very smart girl. You have, like you say here, that she's a straight A student in high school. In her high school diploma, all the grades were A's. Math and science and foreign languages and history and sports and music, everything. Okay? And I said that because you are what you are, just go there and be yourself. 3 months later, she called me and she was all in tears and said that they rejected me. And I said that, okay, tell me what happened. And then she said that, well, the first thing that we had to do is to read a book like this. Unfortunately, it was not my book. But the book contains about 6 to 7 scientific articles published in the journals that they have to read. And then answer about 250 multiple choice questions. A kind of a very straightforward, standardized entrance exam, just to select the best students out of this. And she said that because I'm learned to do this in school, that was an easy thing for me to do. So she was invited to the second phase, okay? And in the second phase, she said that we were invited to a room with about 3 or 4 other candidates, and there were 3 professors there, and they gave us a task. And in half an hour, we had to plan and design an activity for elementary school students, and then play this in front of the panel. And she said that was very easy because I have 3 smaller brothers and sisters, and I've been doing this, and I've been in a Girl Scout, and I just like doing these things. So she was also invited to the third phase of the selection to primary school teacher education in Finland, which is a personal interview. And I said, what happened in this interview? And she said that the first they gave me something to read. It was like a 1-pager of educational professional stuff. I had to read it very quickly. And then they asked me questions about this paper. And she said that was a very easy thing to do. And I said, Vera, what was the most difficult thing that they gave to you in a panel? And she said that one of the things I didn't quite expect was a question when one of the panelists said that, Vera, tell me, why did you come here? And she said, excuse me, what do you mean by this? And this person said that, if I look at your diploma, your school leaving examination, you could go anywhere. You could become a lawyer or doctor or businessman or historian, but why did you come here? Why did you choose primary school teacher education? A primary school teacher. And I said, what did you say? What was your reply? And she said that, well, I said that my uncle is a teacher. And my mother and grandfather. And, you know, teaching is like a family thing, really. And this is why she was rejected. She couldn't prove that she has a moral heart for teaching. How can they know that maybe in the middle of the teacher training she said that, oh no, this is not my thing. They want to have people who can explain what makes them different from all these other people there. And unless you are able to, you know, show your heart, what is there, what is your moral basis for teaching, you will never get there. All right? So now, she graduated 6 months ago, and she's a very happy primary school teacher, and I can tell you one thing about her. She will be a primary school teacher for life. She will not leave in a third year or fourth year like many teachers here in the United States, because they find teaching as something that they don't want to do any longer. And if you think that Vera was a kind of an exception, this is what happened in my university last spring. We received 2,000 applicants to primary school teacher education, exactly the same program that she was applying to, and we accepted 120. Yeah? 5 of them were young people coming straight from the school. All the others had been trying once or twice or 3 times. There was one person who was trying for the 7th time to get into primary school teacher education, and she was successful. So if you can't get in, you know, most of these people, they go and do something with children, or they work as an assistant in the school, or they study something else, and then they come back again and again until they get in. It's a very, very tough thing. So those 120 there, or we have 7,000 applicants in a year, we take 700. 10% will be accepted. It's a very, very difficult thing to get in. So we have, if I can say a word about the teacher education, because I know that here in the United States you have this conversation going on about who can teach, and can you prepare teachers in a 6-week summer course and teach mathematics or science in a school. I don't think that you can do that. Think about, we could have a program called Drill for Finland for dentists. Yeah, that you can prepare dentists in a 6-week summer course. A person who say that I'm really enthusiastic, I'm really keen to fix people's teeth, but actually I'm a civil engineer or lawyer, but I want to work for 2 or 3 years as a dentist. You go there and sit down and you see this person who said that, I'm really keen to fix your teeth, but I'm not really a dentist. Would you be there? No, I wouldn't, yeah. And it's the same thing with kids. I think we should require that the young people who teach not only are very smart or good overall knowledge, but they have to understand how they teach science, particularly science and math. Because it's not only how well you know math and science, you have to understand how people learn math and science. And this is something that needs to be educated, and this is what we are doing in Finland in these master's programs. So that's why, this 10,000-hour rule is something that I often use here, and I'm going to close in a minute. And this is saying that if you want to be good in anything, you need to practice something for about 10,000 hours. This is what Malcolm Gladwell, for example, is saying. Yeah? It's not his idea. It's actually coming from Sweden, from research, yeah? From a person called, it's not here, Anders Eriksson, sorry. But in teaching, it means that if you want to be a good teacher, 10,000 hours is about 8 to 10 years, right? I was teacher for 8 years, and just towards the end of my teaching, I started to feel that I understand not only what's going in the classroom, but in Finland it's very important to understand what's going in the staff room, how you work with other professionals. Just like dentists and medical doctors and lawyers are working with one another, teachers should be doing the same. And that's why, because in Finland most teachers are staying far beyond the 10,000 hours, 8, 10 years. Yeah? We are having this critical mass of great teachers, unlike, unfortunately, here in the United States, where, according to statistics, about half of your teachers leave before the end of the 5th year. So these teachers will never get to the peak where they could, use their full potential to teach. I'll skip this one. And finally, I have 3 lessons for you, very quickly. One is, and these are from Finland to you to think about, I think we need more collaboration and less competition everywhere, not only here in the United States, but in all school systems. I think we are losing this idea that education and schooling is primarily a business of community, of people learning to be together and help one another and do things in collaboration. And now this competition is taking us away from this great ideal that has been in America for a long time before. I think we need more trust and less control. This is a very tricky thing to do, because you cannot just trust people like this. You have to build it. You have to systematically create a culture of trust in your, if not in your society, but you can do it in your school system. And this is what some people are now trying to do in other countries. When they look at Finland, they realize that you can only get good things. You can only get creativity and innovation in the school system and society if you can trust and rely on people's intentions that they do right things and good things if you just let them do these things, rather than controlling and testing and monitoring them all the time. Okay? This is how innovation business works everywhere. And the third one is that I think we need more time to play and less time to test. You know, more time we give testing, the further we are going to the idea of creativity and being, you know, finding your own self. And I don't know how many of you were listening to Sir Ken Robinson yesterday, yeah? But you know that he's an advocate of this type of thing, that we need to, that the play is important to me. And in Finland, you know, we go to school at the age of 7, not 6 or 5 or 4. There are some countries where kids go to school when they're 3, and they sit their first standardized test in the age of 4. So we go to school when we are 7, and many parents in Finland, including myself, are saying that it's very important that our children have time to play, because it's only through play that you can realize that you have a mind, that you have a thing called imagination, and you have a mind that can imagine things, can create new ideas. And if we believe that it takes about 10,000 hours to be good in anything, it takes about 10,000 hours in children, in general, to be good in play. In other words, to realize that they have mind and that they are capable to imagine, create new things with other people. If we go to school at 5, 4, or even 6, we often terminate this process of play by insisting that kids have to do what we tell them to do. Yeah? And we give them a lot of homework to do so that they would not play, but they focus on serious things. And I think that that's not a very smart and wise thing to do if we believe that we want to have people who are able to come up with the new ideas and find their talents, their own source of creativity. This is where we can, if you are in a business of competing anybody in education, don't try to beat anymore your East Asian colleagues in the math and science. Try to beat them in creativity, you know, coming up with the new ideas where I think we are much better off than many other people, okay? And finally, this is my last picture. And this little son is our boy called Otto. Yeah, he's here with us in Miami now. In this picture, Otto is 2 months old. Yeah, and look at his blue eyes. Yeah? And this picture reminds me that every time when I leave, like this morning when I came here, I look at him and he looks at me and says that, "Daddy, why do you have to go? Stay home with me and Mommy. We need you here." And you know, in Finland, kids are developing so fast that in already 2 months old they can speak fluently Finnish. But so, what can a father say in a situation like this? When you feel, your heart says that, of course I should stay here rather than going to this breakfast and speak to my American colleagues and friends. So what do I say? I say that, Otto, you were born in April 17th, 2012. And on that day, when you were born, 350,000 brothers and sisters were born to you around the world. The next day, 350,000 more. And a third day, 350,000 babies more. Your brothers and sisters all around the world. 1 million babies in 3 days. And Otto, I feel that if I'm not going now and talking to these people about the importance of public education and how to improve them and make them better, I'm afraid that many of these brothers and sisters will not have a school that your father or mother had. And there's a silence, and he looks at me and said that, "Okay, go." And then he says, "But come back." Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Sahlberg, for engaging us in this critical conversation.